What if the entire royal fairy tale was fabricated? What if the pregnancy that made headlines across the globe never actually happened? The camera flashes, the white dress, the hand cradling the bump. It was one of the most viral royal moments in modern history. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, stepping onto the stage of global royalty not just as a new member of the firm, but as a glowing, expectant mother. At that moment, millions of hearts melted. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But what if you found out it was all a performance? What if the woman closest to her, her own mother, Doria Ragland, just whispered a confession that could unravel the entire story from the inside? Let that sink in for a moment, because that's exactly what's being claimed now. A quiet lunch, a moment of vulnerability, a few short words, and now the internet is on fire. The truth? It's shocking, it's disturbing, and it's possibly the most controversial royal secret of the century. The big question? Did Meghan Markle fake her first pregnancy? And if so, why? And perhaps even more chilling, how? Let's rewind for a second. Remember the day Meghan and Harry announced they were expecting? It was October 2018. Kensington Palace released a statement saying the couple were very pleased to announce they were expecting a baby in spring 2019. The internet erupted. The world congratulated. But something very subtle, felt off. Not to everyone, but to those who knew where to look. That belly, it moved. It shifted strangely in videos. At one point, it appeared to deflate entirely as she bent to sit. Her hands, always oddly positioned. Her wardrobe, always loose, always theatrical. Some waved it off as internet conspiracies. Others couldn't ignore it. And when Meghan refused to reveal the names of her doctors, skipped the traditional royal birth presentation outside the hospital, and demanded full privacy, the whispers turned into questions. Now, years later, those questions are back, and they're louder than ever. Because the one person who stood beside Meghan through it all, her mother, has apparently slipped. And what she allegedly revealed could shake the monarchy to its very core. Let's get something straight. Doria Ragland is not a woman who speaks lightly. She's not a Twitter warrior. She's not thirsty for interviews. She has, for years, been the very model of discretion, calm, composed, and fiercely loyal to her daughter. So when a well-known entertainment insider claimed they overheard Doria speak words that directly implied Meghan's pregnancy was staged, the media didn't just clutch their pearls, they started digging. And fast. Because if this is true, it changes everything. It calls into question not just Meghan's credibility, but the legitimacy of Archie's birth, the role of the Sussex children in royal succession, and potentially even the integrity of the monarchy itself. Yes, it's that serious. Now let's pause, because you might be thinking, wait, why would Meghan fake something like that? Who does that? Why would anyone even need to? And that's where this story begins to twist. Because what we're about to uncover isn't just about a woman possibly pretending to be pregnant. It's about why. It's about the pressure to be accepted, the expectation to produce a royal heir, the obsession with image, with narrative, with control. And it's about how one mother, perhaps out of guilt or fear or love or all three, may have finally let that control slip. And once she did, the whole story began to unravel. Let's zoom out. Think about how every royal birth has been handled in modern history. Princess Diana, Kate Middleton, they stood outside Lindo Wing just hours after delivering, beaming with their newborns, flanked by proud husbands. Doctors were named. Hospital records were acknowledged. Everything followed tradition. Now contrast that with Meghan. No hospital appearance. No named doctors. A vague announcement that the baby was born in the early morning hours. Then a heavily staged photo op at Windsor Castle days later. Harry? Flustered. Meghan? Perfectly polished. The baby? Nearly invisible. And Doria? Oddly silent. Smiling. Present. But not speaking. Not glowing the way a grandmother usually glows. And that, according to insiders, is when the questions began swirling even inside the palace. But the world moved on. Until recently. Until that lunch. Until one friend claims to have heard Doria say, plainly and with a sigh, she should have told the truth. No cameras. No press. Just one mother, one friend, one damning sentence. The person she said it to didn't intend to leak it, at first. But rumors have a funny way of finding their way to light, especially when they carry the weight of a royal scandal. Within days, that single quote was plastered across subreddits, YouTube thumbnails, Telegram channels, and gossip sites. And suddenly, old footage was being re-examined. Old hospital documents, or lack thereof, were being requested again. Old friends of Meghan began getting strange calls from reporters. Because the conspiracy theory? It had just been turbocharged with the one thing it never had before. A family insider's voice. Now, let's be real. Plenty of people want to believe Meghan. They want to believe in the fairy tale. The American girl who married the prince, broke barriers, and had a beautiful mixed-race royal baby. But fairy tales crack when the truth isn't just inconvenient. It's irreconcilable. No one, not even royalty, gets to rewrite biology without leaving behind inconsistencies. And inconsistencies? This story has plenty. Let's count just a few. No delivery photos. No named doctors. An inexplicably flat stomach just weeks after birth. A baby photo so obscured it looked like a doll. A bump that changed size dramatically from day to day. A timeline that didn't align with maternity leaves, baby showers, or flight travel safety. Coincidence? Or calculated? You decide. But if Doria truly confessed, why now? Why would a mother betray her own daughter? Or maybe the better question is, did Doria ever believe it was a betrayal? What if she thought it was justice? Or penance? Or just the truth finally clawing its way out of her throat? There's more to Doria's story than meets the eye. She was there. She saw it all. The planning. The panic. The rehearsals. The rehearsed bump touches. The frantic PR scrambling. And maybe, just maybe, she knew this charade couldn't hold forever. So she cracked. Just a little. But that little crack? It may be enough to let the flood in. Here's what we're going to do next. We're going to dig into every frame, every document, every clue. We'll examine the royal birth protocol and how Meghan broke it. We'll listen to insiders who saw the bump up close. We'll dive into the legal side. What happens if a royal child wasn't really born of royal blood? We'll ask, was Harry fooled? Was he part of the plan? And most importantly, we'll follow Doria, the quiet matriarch, the yoga instructor who stood in the shadows, the mother who may have just detonated her daughter's reputation with a single whispered truth. Because if Meghan didn't give birth, then whose baby is Archie? And if this was a lie, what else is? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the most public pregnancy of the decade never actually happened? What if the belly was real, just not in the way we thought? That's the uncomfortable question nobody wanted to ask out loud. Until now. Because when Meghan Markle stepped out on January 10, 2019, wearing a crisp, white Calvin Klein dress and gently resting her hands atop a very pronounced baby bump, people gasped. Not because she looked stunning, she did. Not because she was glowing, she was. But because for the first time since Diana, a woman of color was about to deliver a royal heir. It was historic. It was symbolic. It was untouchable. You couldn't question it. You didn't question it. If you did, you were labeled a troll, a racist, or worse. And yet, from that moment on, the internet started doing something the royal family never expected. They started watching. Closely. Frame by frame. Day by day. And what they saw? Didn't add up. Let's start with the first major inconsistency. The bump. It was there. Then bigger. Then smaller. Then gone. Then massive again. At one event in February, Meghan wore a tight black Givenchy coat. The bump seemed modest. A few days later in Morocco, she appeared in a light-colored kaftan. The bump? Enormous. Far beyond what her supposed stage of pregnancy should have looked like. Doctors online began speculating. Women who had carried children noticed things weren't adding up. And then came the infamous video, the one that sent conspiracy forums into a frenzy. Meghan is walking into a room, waving at onlookers, all smiles. She goes to sit, and as she bends, the bump folds. Not shrinks, not shifts, folds, as if it were made of foam or silicone, as if it were detached from her actual body. Still think that's a stretch? Rewatch the footage. Slow it down. Watch her face. She catches it too. For a split second, her smile falters. Her hand darts instinctively to adjust the belly. She pulls her coat over it quickly. A reflex? Or a mistake covered in real time? Here's the thing. No woman who's actually pregnant with her first child moves like that. You don't bend casually. You don't crouch suddenly. You don't risk the bump flipping unless it's not real. But let's be generous. Maybe it was just the fabric, the lighting, the angle, right? Then explain this. At 7 months pregnant, Meghan boarded a long-haul flight to Morocco. No restrictions. No medical team visibly present. Most airlines require a fit-to-fly note past 28 weeks. And yet Meghan breezed through, waving, glowing, wearing high heels, walking on uneven cobblestones. And then, days later, her bump appeared almost half the size it had in London. So which is it? Was she 8 months pregnant, or 5? How can a baby bump reverse grow? Still not convinced? Let's talk protocol. Every royal pregnancy comes with its own set of traditions. Hospital location, press briefings, doctor acknowledgements, aides coordinating timings. Princess Diana followed them. Kate Middleton followed them to the letter, all 3 times. She stood outside the Lindo wing in heels, hours after labor, smiling for the world. Medical team flanked nearby. Names and details released. That's how it's done. Not just for show. For accountability. Because these are not just babies, they're heirs. Future dukes. Possibly future monarchs. The world is entitled to transparency. So when Meghan Markle announced that she and Harry would be privately welcoming their baby with no public presentation, something snapped. Palace insiders were stunned. This had never happened before. Who skips the presentation of a royal baby? More importantly, why? And what were they hiding? Now comes the part most people missed. The official birth announcement for baby Archie said Meghan went into labor early in the morning on May 6, 2019. But royal reporters noticed something strange. At 2 p.m. that day, hours after Archie had allegedly already been born, the palace issued a press release saying Meghan had just gone into labor. Yes, you heard that correctly. The baby was already born, but the palace was still pretending she was in labor. Why? Was it miscommunication? Or deliberate misdirection? By 4 p.m., another statement confirmed the birth had occurred. Wait, what? Why announce labor after the birth had already happened? Unless the birth wasn't real. Unless the timeline had to be manipulated. Because there was nothing to show. And then came the photo op. 3 days later, Windsor Castle. Harry and Meghan appear holding a very small, very bundled-up baby. No facial close-up. No sound. Just a brief appearance for cameras. Harry looked flustered. Meghan looked flawless. But the baby? Oddly still. Not a twitch. Not a whimper. Some viewers noticed the baby's hand seemed stiff. Was it even a real baby? A prop? A pre-filmed clip? And Doria? Nowhere to be seen. Not holding the baby. Not beaming with grandmotherly joy. Just standing in the background. Unsmiling. Silent. Almost like someone who didn't just watch her only daughter give birth. Almost like someone carrying the weight of a secret. Now let's rewind to Meghan's own behavior during the pregnancy. Most pregnant women, especially those having their first child, are cautious. They waddle. They tire easily. They complain of swelling. Not Meghan. She was skydiving through royal engagements. Posing in stilettos. Crouching to hug children. Kneeling to plant trees. No slowing down. No hesitation. And yet, despite all this public energy, she refused to name a doctor. No midwife. No OBGYN. Just private arrangements. Even the birth certificate? Released weeks later. With no hospital listed. Where did she give birth? To this day, no one knows. Some say the Portland Hospital in London. Others claim it was home birth. But no hospital official ever confirmed her presence. There were no witnesses. No press waiting outside. No photos of an ambulance. Nothing. And that's when the conspiracies stopped being fringe. Because a royal pregnancy without a traceable birth? That's not just unusual. It's unprecedented. And with every answer Meghan gave, more questions formed. Her bump never moved the way real pregnancies move. Her skin didn't swell. Her fingers stayed slender. Even after birth. She appeared in public days later looking exactly the same. No postpartum bloat. No exhaustion. Just glam. Was it genetics? Or was it a performance? And if it was a performance, the next logical question becomes, for what purpose? What was gained? What was risked? Why go through with such an elaborate deception? That's where things get darker. Because if Meghan truly faked a pregnancy, she didn't do it for fun. She did it for leverage. For status. To secure her place in the monarchy. To guarantee her child, whoever's child it was, would have a title, protection, and lifelong wealth. That's not just manipulation. That's royal-level strategy. And it only works if everyone believes the lie. But not everyone did. Behind palace walls, murmurs began. William was reportedly concerned. Kate, even more so. Sources say she offered support early on, but grew increasingly suspicious of Meghan's behavior during the pregnancy. They weren't just upset about protocols being broken. They were worried something much more sinister was being staged. When aides brought up inconsistencies in travel schedules, press teams were told to bury it. When staff questioned her bump-changing size, they were dismissed. One aide, who asked not to be named, claimed, "It felt like walking on eggshells. You couldn't even say the word baby around her without a raised eyebrow." That's not joy. That's fear. That's control. And still, Doria said nothing. Until now. Because when her voice finally cracked, it didn't come through an interview. It came through a whisper. To someone who wasn't supposed to hear. But did. And now? Now the whole world is listening. Because if the pregnancy wasn't real, then what happened? If Meghan didn't give birth, then who did? And if Doria's whisper was true, then the royal family has been harboring a secret far greater than any feud or falling out. They've been protecting a lie. But someone inside the palace already knew the truth. And they left behind a clue, in a place no one thought to look. How long can a mother keep a secret? Especially when the secret isn't hers, but her daughter's. For years, Doria Ragland was the most mysterious figure orbiting Meghan Markle's royal whirlwind. Quiet, calm, always composed. She rarely spoke. She never gave interviews. She stayed out of the chaos, out of the headlines, and out of the way. While Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, was busy ranting to tabloids and selling handwritten letters, Doria was silent. Almost suspiciously so. And now, people are asking, was her silence loyalty or guilt? Because when the whisper first surfaced, the one that allegedly came from Doria's own mouth, everything changed. It was like a thunderclap in the middle of a tea party. And it didn't come through the media. It didn't leak from some bitter ex-employee. It came during a yoga retreat, over herbal tea, to a trusted friend. Doria's words? She should have just told the truth. 7 words. 7 explosive, haunting, career-ending words. But let's rewind. Because to understand why those 7 words matter, we need to understand who Doria Ragland really is and why she stayed silent for so long. Doria's background. She wasn't born into money. She didn't grow up dreaming of castles and coronets. She was a social worker, a yoga instructor, a woman with dreadlocks and a nose ring who raised Meghan as a single mother in Crenshaw, Los Angeles. When Meghan got her big break in Suits, Doria didn't chase the limelight. When Meghan dated Harry, Doria didn't leap into interviews or magazine covers. She was present, but private. So when the engagement hit global headlines, and Doria appeared smiling beside Meghan and Harry at that first official event, the world admired her quiet dignity. Here was a black woman being invited into the whitest, most archaic institution in Britain. She was praised, elevated, almost canonized. And then she vanished. The vanishing act. After Archie's birth, Doria didn't stay at Frogmore Cottage long. Despite reports that she would move in to help, insiders say she returned to LA quickly and without much explanation. Odd, isn't it? Your daughter gives birth to her first child, your first grandchild, and you jet off within weeks? Not typical. Most grandmothers want to hold the baby, feed the baby, be there. But Doria left. And for years, she said nothing. No interviews. No baby photos. No proud grandmother gushing. Almost as if she was being careful. Or silenced. Was it NDAs? Legal pressure? Or something deeper, more personal? The pressure to be perfect. You have to understand what Doria represented. She was the respectable face of Meghan's side of the family. She was the antidote to Thomas Markle's tabloid antics. She was the woman the palace wanted at photo ops. Elegant, composed, politically correct. And she knew it. Which meant, if she saw something. If she knew the truth about Meghan's alleged fake pregnancy, she would have carried that weight in silence. For years. And maybe that silence rotted into guilt. Or maybe she just snapped. The whisper. According to the source, a fellow wellness coach, Doria opened up during a casual lunch in Topanga Canyon. No press. No agenda. Just 2 women talking. The topic turned to motherhood. To choices. To truth. And that's when Doria reportedly sighed and said it. She should have just told the truth. The friend leaned in. The truth about what? But Doria didn't answer. She sipped her tea, changed the subject. But the damage was done. The words had left her lips. And the friend? She couldn't unhear them. She sat with that sentence for weeks. Should she tell someone? Should she bury it? In the end, she didn't go to the press. But she did tell one person, who told another. And soon, like all secrets, it snowballed. Meghan's reaction. When rumors reached Meghan's ears that her mother may have leaked the secret, insiders say she was livid. She allegedly accused her PR team of losing control. One aide says she yelled. She knows better than to talk to anyone. Meghan reportedly called Doria immediately. The conversation was brief, tense, cold. Doria neither confirmed nor denied the claim. But from that day on, something shifted between them. Doria stopped appearing in family photos. She skipped several major events. And during Meghan's Netflix docuseries, where family played a central role, Doria's screen time was strangely limited. The guilt factor. Friends close to Doria say she struggled during Meghan's pregnancy. Not physically, but emotionally. She had concerns, one anonymous insider said. She asked a lot of questions about optics, ethics, what was right. And more disturbingly, she didn't like the way Meghan talked about it. Apparently, Meghan treated the pregnancy like a PR project. A brand move, not a biological event. She used words like rollout, reveal strategy, and bump management, the source claims. That doesn't sound maternal. That sounds manufactured. And Doria? She didn't grow up in palaces or boardrooms. She was raised on compassion, honesty, transparency. The glitz of the royal world may have dazzled her briefly. But the longer she stayed, the more she reportedly felt off balance. Legal silence. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the NDA. Many believe Meghan made Doria sign a non-disclosure agreement before Archie's birth. And not just a standard media NDA. A detailed, aggressive, American-style ironclad document, drafted by high-powered lawyers with explicit language about medical details, birth witnesses, and media interactions. Essentially, speak out, and you're ruined. Some reports say the NDA carried a 7-figure penalty clause. That's right, millions of dollars in damages if Doria ever broke her silence. So how could she risk even whispering a confession? Simple. She didn't think it would leave the room. But it did. Why now? This is the million-dollar question. Why would Doria break now? Why, after years of silence, composure, and restraint, would she suddenly slip? One theory, pressure. Since the birth of Lilibet and the continued legal scrutiny around Archie's royal status, Doria's name has come up more frequently. Paparazzi, tabloids. Even intelligence from foreign press outlets began probing her whereabouts, habits, and inner circle. Maybe she felt the walls closing in. Another theory? Remorse. A mother always wants to protect her child. But what if, in protecting Meghan, she harmed her grandson? What if she stood by while a deception unfolded and watched a baby grow up in a lie? That kind of guilt eats at a soul. And at a certain point, it overflows. Even if it's just one sentence. The fallout. Since the whisper leaked, Doria has gone radio silent again. She hasn't responded to press. She hasn't denied anything. And that silence is deafening. Because if it weren't true, wouldn't she just say so? Wouldn't Meghan's lawyers issue a statement? Wouldn't they sue for defamation? But no lawsuits have been filed. No denials. No clarifications. Just eerie, strategic silence. Like the calm before a storm. A mother's dilemma. Let's be honest. Doria is not the villain here. She didn't orchestrate this alleged deception. She didn't wear the bump. She didn't control the narrative. She watched. She stayed close. She likely convinced herself it was for the best. But a lie like this, if true, doesn't stay buried. It eats at everyone it touches. And for Doria, it finally bubbled over. 7 words. That's all it took. 7 words to throw the royal fairy tale into freefall. 7 words to raise global doubts about the legitimacy of a royal birth. 7 words to suggest the biggest secret of Meghan Markle's life was finally unraveling. But the truth about where Archie came from, that trail doesn't begin with Meghan. It begins with a phone call to Beverly Hills and a name that's never been revealed until now. Every royal birth comes with paperwork, documentation, signatures, photographic evidence. So where are Meghan Markle's? That's the question that refuses to go away. In a world where celebrity births are documented to the minute, with doctors giving statements, birth certificates filed, nurses doing interviews, and glossy photos appearing within hours, how is it that one of the most anticipated royal births in modern memory left behind? Nothing? No credible hospital admission, no verified medical staff, no attending physicians, no postnatal hospital statement, no concrete time of delivery, just a vague press release, a blurred photo op, and silence. So, let's follow the paperwork trail. Because if Meghan truly gave birth to baby Archie on May 6, 2019, someone had to deliver that child. And yet, to this day, not a single confirmed doctor has ever come forward. Not one. Let's start with the official timeline. On May 6, 2019, the palace issued two brief statements. 2 p.m., Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex went into labor in the early hours of this morning. 2:40 p.m., Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex was safely delivered of a son at 0526 hours. Wait, what? The first announcement says she was in labor. The second, just 40 minutes later, says she'd already given birth. But hold on. If she gave birth at 5:26 a.m., why did the palace wait nearly 9 hours to say she was in labor? Why not just announce the birth immediately? Unless the palace had no idea how to explain something that hadn't happened in the usual way. Unless they were buying time, scrambling to frame a story that would pass public scrutiny. Let that sit for a moment. Now let's talk hospitals. Most royal births, Diana's, Kate's, took place at the Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington. It's tradition. It's secure. It's photographed. It's transparent. Meghan, however, chose the Portland Hospital, a private, American-owned facility in London's West End. Fine. It's still a hospital. It has maternity services. But here's the thing. No one saw her arrive. No one saw her leave. No hospital staff confirmed her presence. Usually, in the hours following a royal birth, at least some hospital representatives give statements or wave to the media. Doctors, midwives, nurses, someone always confirms what happened. But with Meghan? Nothing. And when journalists began calling Portland for confirmation, they were stonewalled. According to an anonymous hospital source, we were told under no circumstances are we to speak to media about that patient. That patient. Not Meghan. Not the Duchess. Just a code of silence. How does a world-famous royal give birth in total blackout? Birth certificate clues. Now here's where things get truly strange. When Archie's birth certificate was finally released on May 17th, 11 days after his birth, it raised eyebrows. First, the certificate listed Meghan's full name. Rachel Meghan Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Standard. Harry? His Royal Highness Henry Charles Albert David Duke of Sussex. Also standard. But under place of birth. Portland Hospital, Westminster. Here's the twist. There was no digital record of her being admitted to the hospital. No verifiable staff corroborating her stay. No photographs. No footage. No hospital security logs leaked. No first-hand statements from anyone who supposedly treated her. Compare that with Kate Middleton's births. Within hours of delivering George, Charlotte, and Louis, doctors gave press briefings. Royal aides distributed official statements. Hospital staff beamed proudly, waving at crowds. It was transparent. With Meghan, it was a void. Almost like the hospital was listed after the fact. Almost like it was filled in to satisfy documentation requirements. So the question becomes, was she ever there? Or did someone else give birth there? Someone whose name we'll never know? Requests for evidence. Several independent journalists filed FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, requests to verify Meghan's stay at Portland. They weren't looking for sensitive medical data, just admission logs, security logs, or even billing info. All were denied. One FOIA officer even responded, "We have no record of that individual's admission on the stated date." That should have made headlines. Instead, it was buried. And here's why. Because legally, Meghan and Harry were private citizens in that moment, not acting members of the royal family. Which means, the palace had no legal obligation to disclose details. And Meghan? She had no obligation to release medical records. She could say she gave birth anywhere, and no one could challenge it publicly. But does that make it true? Or does it make it untraceable? The photo that wasn't. Let's talk about that first picture. You remember it. Windsor Castle. Meghan in white. Harry beaming. A bundled infant, his face turned away. At first glance, it looked like a happy royal family moment. But then people started noticing things. The baby never moved. Not once. The body looked stiff. The fingers didn't curl. Some claimed it looked like a doll. Others said it was simply a sleeping baby. But here's the kicker. No raw footage exists of that moment. The only released clip was highly edited, just a few seconds long. There were no media photographers allowed. No crowd. No press Q&A. Just a single palace-approved videographer and a press officer. Compare that to Kate's post-birth appearances, which were essentially public events. Why was Meghan so tightly controlled? Was it protection? Or misdirection? The doctor who wasn't there. Palace protocol typically involves announcing the royal obstetrician. Kate had Dr. Guy Thorpe Beeston. Diana had Dr. George Pinker. But Meghan? No official doctor was ever named. When pressed, the palace said Meghan's medical team would remain private. And yet, royal births have never been private affairs. They are historical events. Which leads us to a chilling theory. There was no doctor named because there was no delivery. Or at least, not by Meghan. If a surrogate delivered the child, all this secrecy suddenly makes sense. Media gag orders. Several UK outlets reported that they were warned, explicitly, not to dig into Meghan's birth story, not to contact hospital staff, not to ask too many questions. According to one editor, we were told if we pushed the issue, we'd be blacklisted. Blacklisted for asking about a royal baby? When did journalism become criminal curiosity? The fear surrounding the story was palpable. Even the Daily Mail, notorious for poking into every royal crevice, backed off. That alone speaks volumes. The missing midwife. In many high-profile births, especially with public figures, the midwife becomes a minor celebrity. They give interviews. They share insights. They even write memoir chapters. But with Meghan? Nothing. No midwife ever surfaced. No, I was honored to be their statement. No professional photo with a newborn Archie. Silence. Which raises another uncomfortable possibility. There was no midwife, because there was no delivery to witness. Or if there was one, she wasn't attending Meghan. She was attending someone else. Someone who remained off camera. Someone who signed an NDA the size of a royal vault. Archie's birth, a controlled illusion? Put it all together. A shifting baby bump. A timeline discrepancy. A blackout hospital stay. A late, vague certificate. A doll-like baby in photos. No medical staff confirmation. No FOIA documentation. No hospital statement. No eyewitnesses. Now ask yourself, is that how a royal baby enters the world? Or is that how a narrative is constructed? Because if Meghan didn't give birth, someone else did. And that means Archie's origin story isn't just a secret. It's a cover-up. And the person paid to make that cover-up airtight just left the country. Quietly. With a phone full of encrypted messages and a name Meghan never thought would resurface. It folded. On camera. In front of witnesses. No trick of the light. No shadow. No angle to explain it away. It happened. Meghan Markle's baby bump collapsed. Not sagged. Not shifted. Collapsed. And from that single moment, a ripple began. A chain reaction that turned skeptical murmurs into investigative obsession. Because that footage didn't just raise eyebrows. It detonated a conspiracy. Let's set the scene. October 2018. Meghan and Prince Harry are on a royal tour of Australia. She's newly pregnant. Publicly glowing. The cameras love her. She steps out of the car in a deep burgundy dress. Waves. Smiles. Bump prominent. They greet a crowd. Walk into a room. She goes to sit. And in that moment, captured from 3 different angles, the bump folds inward. Like a memory foam pillow bending in half. Her coat bunches awkwardly. Her face, just for a flash, twitches. Then she adjusts. Quickly. Smoothly. But not smoothly enough. Because within hours, someone slowed that footage down. Froze it. Replayed it. And the internet exploded. Let's be clear. Pregnancy bumps don't fold. They don't deflate. They don't flatten like a soft prop. Especially not at 6 months. But there it was, in living color, caught in 1080p. And the question burned. Was she wearing a prosthetic belly? Now, celebrities have worn fake bumps before. For films. For red carpet stunts. For decoys during real pregnancies. But never, never, has a working royal been caught wearing one. Because if Meghan wore a fake bump, If the pregnancy was fabricated, then every photo, every charity appearance, every hands-cradling belly moment was staged. That's not just deceit. That's theater. That's fraud at a national level. And the monarchy would be complicit in the act. Here's where it gets more disturbing. That collapsing bump video was scrubbed. Within days, major outlets who had uploaded it took it down. YouTube clips disappeared. Instagram videos were removed. Copyright claims flew left and right. Accounts posting the slowed footage were flagged for harassment, medical misinformation, or privacy violations. One user had their entire Twitter account locked after tweeting the clip with a single caption. This is not how pregnancy works. So now the question became not just, what is Meghan hiding? But, why is everyone protecting the lie? Let's analyze the footage further. Because that wasn't the only incident. There were at least 3 other moments during her pregnancy where Meghan's bump appeared wrong. The bump drop. At one outdoor event, Meghan turns too quickly. The bump shifts downward violently, like it was attached via straps that came loose. She pauses, smiles, adjusts her coat, keeps moving. The bumps shrink. In New York, during her $500,000 baby shower, paparazzi caught her entering a hotel in a black tracksuit. The bump was tiny. But just 48 hours earlier, at an official engagement in London, it was twice the size. How does that happen? Different outfits? Lighting? Or different prosthetics? The belly bounce. At an Australian walkabout, Meghan leans forward to pet a dog. As she stands upright, the bump jiggles. Not subtly, not like body fat, but like a loose object under clothing. And still, no one in the press dared to ask. Not directly, not publicly. They knew the consequences. But the bump wasn't just inconsistent in movement. It was inconsistent in design. In some appearances, Meghan's bump was high and tight, like a basketball. In others, it sagged low, like a late-term belly. Some days it was visibly asymmetrical. Other days, it looked glued in place. Real pregnancy doesn't switch styles like wardrobe pieces. And Meghan, ever the fashion icon, changed her silhouette constantly. High heels, tight skirts, open coats framing the bump perfectly. Always photogenic. Always just enough to show, but never enough to see the outline of her real abdomen. Almost like the bump was a character, with its own costume schedule. Let's dig into the prosthetics themselves. Because fake pregnancy bellies aren't rare. You can buy them online. Silicone, foam, adjustable, weighted, hyper-realistic. Some come with sound emitters that mimic fetal movement. Others can be worn under any fabric without detection. And according to a leaked email from a Hollywood costume supplier in 2020, one major production company requested a series of bespoke pregnancy enhancement garments around late 2018. The buyer? Unnamed. Anonymous. Based in Toronto. Guess who was living in Toronto during her suit's years? Guess who had the industry contacts to make a discreet purchase? The dots connect faster than the palace's press team could erase them. But let's ask the big question. Why would Meghan fake it? Why go through the stress of wearing a bump, manipulating timelines, risking exposure? Why not just use a surrogate openly? After all, plenty of celebrities do it. Kim Kardashian, Nicole Kidman, Tyra Banks. It's not shameful. It's accepted. But for Meghan, it would have been disastrous. Because she wasn't just building a family. She was building a brand. The image of a modern princess, biracial, independent, motherly, glowing. A woman breaking barriers. A woman carrying royal blood in her womb. To admit to using a surrogate would be to surrender that narrative. To admit she wasn't the vessel. To admit her body wasn't the story. To lose control. And Meghan never loses control. Now imagine the preparation. Wearing the bump. Practicing the gait. The belly rubs. The sideways poses. The protective hand placement. Always with the left hand low, the right hand high. Framing the bump like a portrait. That's not instinct. That's choreography. And it worked. For a while. Until the bend. Until the fold. Until one motion betrayed the illusion. The palace's response? They didn't deny. They didn't comment. They just went silent. But privately, sources say aides were panicking. One staffer allegedly tried to resign after viewing the footage frame by frame. She was told to stay in line or be reassigned. Another royal protection officer was quietly transferred out of Meghan's security detail. Why? He reportedly questioned a last-minute wardrobe change, involving a belted device that wasn't approved. He was removed within a week. Coincidence? Or cleanup? And then came the PR machine. Suddenly, every outlet that had shared the bump video was flooded with counter-narratives. Meghan's bump defied gravity. The miracle of fashion-forward maternity wear. Isn't it empowering to wear what you want, pregnant or not? The focus was shifted from "did she fake it?" to "why are you criticizing a pregnant woman?" It worked for a while, but the internet doesn't forget. Reddit threads, Telegram dumps, private Telegram groups. They had already saved the footage, archived it, slowed it down, dissected it frame by frame. And the verdict? That bump wasn't real. And the more you watch it, the more it screams. This was a performance. And yet, there's a twist. Because one person who helped Meghan rehearse her public bump movements, an old stylist turned pregnancy consultant, recently left the country. No explanation. No farewell posts. Just gone. She was last seen boarding a private flight to Switzerland. And her name? Sealed in a non-disclosure agreement. But a hacked iCloud leak may have exposed a single note. Ensure prosthetic is secured before descent. Avoid seated cameras. Ref. Burgundy coat protocol. Burgundy coat. The same coat she wore when the bump collapsed. But what the palace didn't expect was the nurse. The one who claims she saw the real birth certificate and was told to shred it. The one who just decided to talk. And what she remembers might be the most damning detail yet. What do you do when the world believes a lie, but everyone behind the scenes knows the truth? You whisper. And that's exactly what began to happen in early 2019 among stylists, nannies, assistants, fertility specialists, and former friends in LA and London. Whispers, murmurs, unconfirmed stories, stories of a secret, a switch, a surrogate. None of it made it to page 6. Not officially, but behind closed doors, people were talking. And what they were saying didn't just hint at deception. It pointed to an operation, carefully orchestrated, legally protected, financially shielded. And at the center of it, Meghan Markle. But more disturbingly, also Doria Ragland. And maybe even Harry himself. Because this wasn't just one woman faking a bump. It was a network of insiders. All carrying a secret too big for daylight. Until now. Let's start in Beverly Hills. In December 2018, just before Meghan's bump began ballooning in size, a woman, unidentified but connected to the LA wellness scene, visited a high-profile fertility clinic in West Hollywood. She wasn't famous, but the man who accompanied her was. According to a former clinic receptionist, he introduced himself simply as a family representative. He requested complete privacy, offered to pay cash up front. 6 figures. The request? Discretion for a surrogate arrangement involving a high-profile client who would not be identified by name. The surrogate herself? She had already been selected, and she was already pregnant. At the time, no one connected the dots. But a week later, the same man was seen with Doria Ragland at a juice bar in Malibu. Coincidence? Or coordination? The surrogacy timeline. Here's what we know, and what's been pieced together by insiders, whistleblowers, and ex-staff. October 2018, Meghan and Harry announced they're expecting. November 2018, Meghan's bump suddenly appears in paparazzi photos. December 2018, a woman arrives at a clinic in West Hollywood. Rumors of a hush-hush surrogacy deal swirl. January 2019, Meghan travels extensively, with no apparent pregnancy discomfort. March 2019, a private jet leaves LAX bound for London, manifest sealed. Some claim the surrogate was on board. May 6, 2019, Archie is born. But Meghan is never photographed leaving or entering a hospital. Too many threads. Too many alignments. Too much smoke. And every time someone tried to bring it up publicly, they were silenced. The nurse's story. Enter Nina, not her real name. She worked part-time at a private maternity clinic affiliated with Portland Hospital. One day in late April, a file came across her desk. It was labeled, Patient X, Royal Discretion Required. Inside, a blank birth certificate template. Already stamped. Already signed by a private physician, one whose name she didn't recognize. But no hospital entry. No weight. No date. No parent names. Just a sticky note attached. Hold. Await confirmation. Nina flagged it to her supervisor. 2 days later, the file was gone. No explanation. No record. And when she asked about it, she was told, "You weren't supposed to see that. Let it go." A week later, she was reassigned. Then, terminated. No reason given. But before leaving, she made a copy of that sticky note. She kept it. And now, it's been leaked to an anonymous journalist. The birth facility that wasn't. Multiple sources now claim the actual birth didn't happen in London at all. It happened in New York, in a private birthing suite just outside the city. Why? Because that's where the surrogate felt safe. Far from press. Far from palace staff. Far from protocol. And Meghan? She stayed in London, wearing the bump, smiling for cameras, crafting the illusion. Insiders believe a private courier transported the infant to the UK within 24 hours of birth via private jet, using a diplomatic channel that required no customs declarations. And the woman who allegedly coordinated the whole operation? A doula with Hollywood connections and a sealed criminal record from 2011. You can't make this up. The Soho House whisper. Here's where it gets darker. An anonymous tipster claimed that during a Soho House brunch in Toronto, Meghan made a joke, over champagne, about outsourcing motherhood. She reportedly said, "I get to skip the stretch marks and still get the air. Isn't that genius?" Some laughed. Others were stunned. One guest allegedly told a friend, "It didn't feel like a joke. It felt rehearsed." That friend later tried to sell the story, but no publication would touch it. The legal threats from Meghan's team were already legendary. The NDA web. If a surrogate was used, she wouldn't be talking. Because she can't. Insiders claim Meghan's legal team crafted one of the most aggressive NDAs ever issued for a private medical situation. Lifetime silence clause. 7-figure penalties. Restrictions on communication, location, even facial expressions in public. One former paralegal who briefly worked for Meghan's legal firm described it as a fortress of paperwork. She said, "It wasn't just about protecting the child. It was about protecting the narrative. Because if it got out, if the world discovered that the Duchess of Sussex faked a pregnancy to gain public sympathy and royal favor, the fallout would be nuclear." Doria's involvement. Some believe Doria was not just aware, but instrumental. That she vetted the surrogate herself. That she coached Meghan through bump behavior. That she coordinated medical shipments, doulas, postnatal schedules. And when guilt caught up with her, that's when she cracked. That's when she whispered. She should have just told the truth. Because maybe Doria didn't expect it to go this far. Maybe she thought it would be a discreet surrogate birth, followed by honesty. But Meghan? She wanted the optics. She wanted the motherhood headlines. She wanted to be Diana 2.0. And to do that, she had to perform. Hollywood knows. Here's the real shocker. Several major Hollywood figures allegedly knew the pregnancy was staged. They attended the baby shower in New York. They saw Meghan sip wine, lift heavy gifts, dance until 2 a.m. in heels. And they said nothing, because she was one of them. And they protect their own. But a few whispers still leaked. One assistant, no longer in Meghan's circle, claimed, "The shower was for us, not a baby. There wasn't a single diaper in sight." Another said, "It felt like a farewell party for the bump. As if the act was nearly over. As if they all knew the final scene was coming." The implications. If Meghan used a surrogate and faked the pregnancy, it's not just a breach of trust. It's potential fraud on multiple fronts. Fraudulent public statements. Misrepresentation to the monarchy. Potential immigration violations for the infant's transport. Succession protocol violations. And Harry? If he knew and participated? That's royal deception. A betrayal of national trust. Of constitutional procedure. Of family. But the woman who carried Archie? She's alive. She's out there. And someone just made contact. Her name was sealed. Her identity erased. But her silence? Maybe cracking. And what she kept from Meghan could destroy everything. Why would someone risk everything? Credibility, legacy, and royal standing. To fake something as deeply personal as a pregnancy? That's the million-dollar question. Because by now, we've seen the signs. The folding bump. The vanished records. The silence from medical staff. The whisper from Doria. But behind every elaborate illusion lies a reason. A motive. And in Meghan Markle's case, it may be more complex and more dangerous than we ever imagined. Because this wasn't about a baby. This was about power, position, protection, and something even deeper. Legacy. Let's go back to the beginning. To Meghan in 2016. Not yet a duchess. Not yet married. Just a Hollywood actress with a lifestyle blog and a role on Suits. She was ambitious, driven, charming, always networking, always curating. And when she met Prince Harry, she didn't just see love. She saw leverage. A way into history. A way out of obscurity. A way to become untouchable. But the clock was ticking. She wasn't 25. She wasn't even 30. She was nearing 37, the age where fertility becomes a very real concern for many women. And if she was going to lock in her royal position, her global brand, and her security, she needed more than a ring. She needed a child. The royal rulebook. In the royal world, motherhood isn't just about children. It's about legacy, succession, status. Producing an heir changes everything. It makes you permanent. It gives you weight. Ask Princess Diana. Ask Kate Middleton. Once you carry a royal child, your role is cemented. Without a child, you're replaceable. Ask Fergie. Ask Wallace Simpson. Meghan knew this, and she knew time was not on her side. So, what if the natural route wasn't an option? What if, for reasons she never disclosed, Meghan couldn't, or wouldn't, carry a child? Medical? Cosmetic? Image-related? We may never know. But whatever the reason, the outcome remained the same. She had to appear pregnant. She had to be seen glowing, cradling, beaming, expanding. So the world would buy it. So the palace would buy it. So history would buy it. Because if she used a surrogate and told the truth, she'd be admired, but not sanctified. She'd have a baby, but not the image of motherhood she desperately needed. The Diana obsession. Let's be honest. Meghan modeled herself after Princess Diana from day one. The clothes, the expressions, the charity work, the wounded innocence. She positioned herself as a modern Diana. Only smarter, savvier, more in control. But there was one thing Diana had that Meghan didn't. A belly, a public pregnancy. That iconic image of a princess carrying the air, vulnerable, strong, radiant. Meghan wanted that moment. Not for the child. For the optics. For the cover stories. The magazine spreads. The symbolic power. It wasn't about parenting. It was about the narrative. And in Meghan's world, the narrative is everything. Brand Sussex. Here's where the motive gets strategic. Because the moment Meghan married Harry, she became more than a duchess. She became a brand. She locked in Netflix deals, Spotify contracts, books, documentaries, public speaking tours, and central to all of them, motherhood. Not just being a mom, but being seen as a mom. Every business venture she pursued leaned on that image. The children's book, The Bench. Based on Archie. The Netflix docuseries. Family-centered. The Archwell Foundation. Framed around parenting values. No pregnancy. No child. No bump. No brand. So what do you do when reality doesn't cooperate? You create a new reality. The fame equation. Let's break it down in cold numbers. A royal pregnancy generates an average of 12 million media mentions, 3.5 billion Google impressions, 100 million plus in merchandising, branding, and PR valuation. Multiply that by Meghan's unique position, the first biracial woman to marry into the monarchy, and the numbers skyrocket. If she had gone the surrogacy route and announced it publicly, sure, it would have earned support, but it wouldn't have become mythology. The world wouldn't see her as the woman who gave birth to change. She'd be another celebrity mom, not a royal icon. And Meghan? She wasn't aiming for admiration. She was aiming for immortality. The control factor. Meghan doesn't like vulnerability. Ask anyone who's worked with her. She controls her image, her narrative, her lighting, her voice tone. Everything. Pregnancy, however, is messy. Swollen ankles, exhaustion, back pain, leaking, bloating, unpredictable. So what's the solution? Let someone else do the physical labor, while she reaps the emotional glory. It's the ultimate control move. She becomes the symbol of maternal strength, without the sacrifice. And when people praise her, she wins. And when they question her, she weaponizes that too. You're attacking a pregnant woman. You're policing a mother's body. You're spreading conspiracy theories. It's a win-win, unless someone breaks the silence. Doria's regret. This is where her mother re-enters the picture. Because Doria was there through all of it. The planning, the prepping, the bump fitting. She watched her daughter stage moments that millions believed. And maybe, just maybe, she started to feel the weight of it. Because lies don't just hurt the person telling them. They hurt everyone forced to keep them. Doria may have believed it would blow over, that no one would dig, that Meghan would come clean eventually. But Meghan didn't. She doubled down. She went on Oprah. She cried on camera. She said, "I was heavily pregnant when I was suicidal." A line designed to stun, to silence, to shut down skeptics. But Doria? She knew better. She knew the truth. And eventually, she cracked. The narcissism factor. Let's talk psychology. Meghan is charismatic, intelligent, strategic. But many who've worked with her describe traits that lean toward narcissism. The need for total admiration, the demand for loyalty, the intolerance of criticism, the reinvention of facts to suit her narrative, the removal of anyone who challenges her version of events. Now apply that to a pregnancy. In Meghan's mind, she had to be seen as the perfect mother. Not just a mother, the mother who made history. She didn't want to risk being seen in pain, sweaty, exhausted, hormonal. She wanted to be photoshoot perfect. And fake pregnancies? They can be tailored for lighting. They don't come with stretch marks. They don't ruin your wardrobe. They don't scream on airplanes. They're manageable, predictable, controllable, just like Meghan wants everything to be. Harry's role. But what about him? Was he blind? Was he complicit? Or was he simply too in love to ask the obvious? Many believe Harry knew, at least on some level, but by the time he did, he was already in too deep. And the alternative, confessing the truth, would mean admitting to the world that he lied, that he helped orchestrate a deception of royal proportions, that he allowed the palace, the press, and the public to believe something that wasn't true. He couldn't do that. So he smiled. He posed. He said, "I'm just over the moon." And now, he's trapped. In Meghan's narrative. In his own silence. In a lie too big to escape. The cost of the lie. So what did Meghan gain? Everything. Global attention. A solidified role in the royal family. Sympathy. Branding. Netflix and Spotify deals. Public adoration. Control. And what did she lose? Trust. Integrity. Family ties. Public goodwill. The moment the cracks started to show, people turned. Because a pregnancy isn't just a private matter when you're royalty. It's a national, and in Meghan's case, global, event. To fabricate that isn't just manipulation. It's betrayal. But Meghan made one mistake. She didn't count on the surrogate developing a conscience. She didn't count on a doula writing everything down. She didn't count on the nurse saving the sticky note. And she certainly didn't count on her mother whispering the truth. Now, the walls are closing in, and the next person to speak may finally blow it all wide open. Was Prince Harry fooled, or did he help fool the world? That's the question now echoing through Buckingham Palace, royal fan forums, and behind the scenes at Netflix. Because as the bump folded, the records vanished, and Doria whispered the first crack in the story. One figure remained oddly insulated, curiously quiet, and at times, almost robotic in his responses. Harry. But was he the victim of deception? Or the architect of it? Or worse, was he dragged into a scheme he couldn't escape from? The truth might be more twisted than any fairy tale. Because if Meghan Markle's pregnancy was fake, the most disturbing part might be that Harry knew all along. The over-the-moon moment. Let's rewind to May 6, 2019. 2 days after the so-called birth of Archie, Harry appeared in front of cameras. No Meghan, no baby, just Harry. He was emotional, smiling, a little shaky. "I'm just over the moon," he said. But rewatch the clip now, years later, knowing what we know. Something feels off. His words are excited, but his eyes? Tired, guarded, like a man holding back more than just nerves. As if the happiness was scripted, rehearsed, expected. Was it just new dad nerves? Or was it something darker, something heavier? A man walking the tightrope between truth and performance? The security detail leak. Multiple sources have since claimed that Harry's security detail wasn't alerted on the night Meghan allegedly went into labor. That's not protocol. A royal birth triggers an entire chain of action. Armed drivers, secured perimeters, medical escorts. But that night, nothing. No movement from Frogmore Cottage. No vehicles tracked to Portland Hospital. According to one insider, we received no activation orders. Just a text that morning saying the child had been born. No time to prepare. No scheduled pickup. No medical convoy. Just a baby. Magically born. With no one there to witness. And Harry? He didn't push back. He simply said, "Thank you," like he'd rehearsed it. The body language breakdown. Throughout Meghan's pregnancy, Harry was present at dozens of engagements. But watch the footage carefully. His posture is often stiff. He rarely touches the bump. He keeps his hands in his pockets. Compare that to William during Kate's pregnancies. Hands on the belly, beaming, fully engaged. Harry? Distant, detached. There's even more.